Another Saturday is here, and I'm super excited to be coming your way with yet another captivating edition of China Now. My name is Makiza Micheline Latifa. In the past few weeks, we have covered a lot of spy stories on the show, which has raised serious security concerns in China. This week, we continue with that update as the Chinese State Security Department has successfully extracted a spyware sample called Second Date during the investigation of a recent cyber attack on Northwestern Polytechnical University. On the back of this particular story, there's been some very interesting revelations on the involvement of the United States of America in all this. I know you can't wait for the full details from Kris on China Currents, so stay tuned for details of this and many others.
China Currents is a weekly news talk show from China to the world. We cover viral news about China every week and also give you the newest updates on China's cutting-edge technologies. Let's get started. Hi, welcome to China Currents. I'm Kris. On September 20th, the Chinese National Computer Virus Emergency Response Center released a full investigation report on China's internet security. It disclosed that the United States has been involved in hacking and surveillance activities targeting Huawei's headquarters since 2009. According to the report, the Chinese State Security Department successfully extracted a spyware sample called Second Date during the investigation of a recent cyber attack on Northwestern Polytechnical University. It was revealed that this spyware was developed by the US National Security Agency and had been covertly operating within thousands of network devices worldwide. The NSA, through its specialized hacking unit called Tailored Access Operations and Advanced Weaponry, has repeatedly launched systematic and platform-based attacks against China, with the aim of stealing vital data resources. It's well known that the US has long been engaged in massive eavesdropping and cyber espionage activities against countries, including its allies, taking advantage of its technological superiority. This revelation sheds light on the extent of the cyber espionage operations conducted by the US against the Chinese tech giants. As the cyber domain increasingly becomes a new battleground for safeguarding national security, CVERC stated it is imperative for the country to strengthen cybersecurity awareness and capabilities. Next up, on September 17th, a drafted report for the EU was leaked to the media. The report urges European leaders to take strong measures to reduce their reliance on China for batteries. Multiple media outlets reported that this document will be a focal point of the EU's upcoming economic security meeting next month. As the electric vehicle market continues to expand, the EU has become increasingly dependent on China for its critical components, including fuel cells and lithium-ion batteries. European leaders are concerned about repeating the same pattern as their previous reliance on Russia before the Russo-Ukrainian conflict. Prior to the disclosure of the draft report, the EU had already implemented policies to restrict supplies from China. Starting in 2024, Chinese battery producers will face tougher environmental reviews in Europe. The EU has also planned to impose limits on import of strategic resources from any single supplier country. While the Chinese Foreign Ministry has not yet responded, discussions have already begun on China's internet. People commented that the EU strategy may ultimately have negative consequences. Many pointed out that Europe was compelled to turn to expensive liquefied natural gas from the US after cutting off gas trade with Russia. Critics argue that decoupling from China will only benefit the US, as it seeks to leverage its NATO allies in its effort to contain China. Next up, let's turn to Chinese diplomacy. On September 17th, according to both Beijing and Washington, Chinese Foreign Minister Wang Yi met multiple times with the White House National Security Advisor Jake Sullivan over the weekend in Malta, where candid, substantive, and constructive talks were held. Wang Yi emphasized the Taiwan issue constitutes the foremost and inviolable red line in Sino-US relations. He urged the US to abide by three landmark China-US joint communiques and fulfill its commitment to not support Taiwan separatism. During the talks, Both sides agreed to continue implementing the significant consensus reached at the Bali summit between the leaders of the two countries. They committed to maintaining high-level exchanges, conducting consultation on Asia-Pacific affairs, maritime issues, and diplomatic policies. The two sides also delved into international and regional issues, including the situation in the Asia-Pacific region, Ukraine, and Korean Peninsula. 4 days later, on September 21st, China's top diplomat Wang Yi held a meeting with Russian President Vladimir Putin in St. Petersburg. The meeting involved detailed discussions on crucial matters pertaining to the strategic security interests of both countries. President Vladimir Putin conveyed his warm regards to Chinese President Xi Jinping and acknowledged the significant progress achieved through their landmark meeting in March. He emphasized the successful cooperation between Russia and China in various fields, highlighting Russia's ability to effectively handle the sanctions imposed by the US and EU. He expressed his anticipation for further collaboration with China within the framework of the Belt and Road Initiative. The ongoing Ukraine war was also on the agenda. President Vladimir Putin reiterated Russia's willingness to pursue a negotiated settlement to the conflict. Next up, let's turn to China's economy. In response to market rumors of massive layoffs at its Shanghai Research and Development Department, American chip giant Qualcomm made a statement on September 21st, clarifying that these reports were overstated. The company did confirm that it anticipates some staffing adjustments due to ongoing uncertainties in the macroeconomic and demand environment. Qualcomm had previously mentioned in its third-quarter earnings conference call and its 10Q report submitted in August that due to the continued uncertainty in the macroeconomic and demand environment, the company expects to take further adjustment measures to achieve sustained investment in key growth opportunities and business diversification. While the corresponding plans are still being developed, the main measures are expected to include layoffs. However, the market rumors of massive layoffs, office closures, and withdrawal from Shanghai are exaggeration of the truth, according to the company's statement. Next up, on September 20th, Guangzhou became the first Tier 1 city in China to relax housing purchase restrictions. The Guangzhou Municipal People's Government Office issued a notice allowing local registered households to purchase up to 2 residential properties in designated urban districts. Non-local households can purchase 1 residential property if they show proof of paying individual income tax or social insurance in Guangzhou continuously for 2 years prior. The notice also aims to enhance public rental housing protection. With this move, Guangzhou becomes the first Tier 1 city in China to partially ease their housing purchase restrictions. Recently, under the favorable policies such as recognizing housing but not loans and reduction in commercial loan interest rate, Guangzhou's real estate market has shown signs of recovery. Analysts believe administrative curbs will be gradually phased out in lower-tier cities below Tier 1, and Tier 1 cities will take a gradual approach, starting by easing restrictions in suburbs before moving into urban centers. The incremental loosening measures aim to stabilize the real estate industry and prevent systemic financial risks. Next up, on September 17th, a hashtag criticizing Apple's website trended on Chinese Weibo. Chinese netizens shared an image of the customer service representative featured on the Apple website. The staff member has her hair in a pigtail style with her eyes squinted. The picture provoked many Chinese to denounce her appearance, considering Apple deliberately insults the nation. However, it was later confirmed that the portrait was of a Native American employee based in California, and the same image was being used on Apple's website in the United States, Japan, and Korea, rather than exclusively on its Chinese website. Despite the clarification, Chinese voices continue to demand an apology from Apple. This controversy arises from cultural differences between nations. The portrait is connected to stereotypes of slanted eyes and the queue hairstyle against Chinese people of the late Qing dynasty. Years of war and foreign intervention marked the period as the century of humiliation starting point. However, it's important to note that indigenous employees should not be criticized for her appearance. Conflict occurs as many Chinese lack knowledge of the indigenous people in America, just like many Americans have no idea about Chinese history. Nevertheless, such situations place multinational cooperation like Apple in a dilemma when formulating international branding strategies. It becomes crucial for companies to carefully consider the diverse cultural backgrounds in a globalized market. Next up, the World Intellectual Property Organization recently unveiled the 2023 edition of the Global Innovation Index Technology Cluster Ranking on its official website. The GII serves as the comprehensive assessment of innovation performance, encompassing approximately 80 indicators across 132 economies. The latest rankings showcased an intriguing trend. The top 5 technology clusters worldwide are currently situated in East Asia, with China taking the lead with the highest number of clusters. As a globally recognized assessment of innovation capabilities of countries and economies, the official announcement of this year's GII rankings is scheduled for September 27th. The GII 2023 focused on the theme of technology clusters, emphasizing the pivotal role of innovation hubs in fostering regional and global collaboration, as well as the challenges and opportunities of cluster development in the post-pandemic era. The pre-release of the GII Technology Clusters ranking sheds light on regions boasting the most concentrated global technological activities. Tokyo Yokohama in Japan emerged as the largest technology cluster globally, closely followed by Shenzhen, Hong Kong, Guangzhou, and Seoul. China's Beijing cluster and Shanghai's Suzhou cluster also secured notable positions on the list. According to this year's GII findings, China now boasts 24 technology clusters, marking an increase from 21 clusters recorded in the previous year. Notably, several middle-income economies experienced substantial growth in technological output within their respective technology clusters. India, in particular, boasts 4 top-tier technology clusters, with Chennai and Bangalore witnessing the most significant surge in the density of innovators and scientific authors. Furthermore, emerging economies such as Brazil, India, Turkey, as well as countries beyond the top 100 ranking like Argentina, Egypt, and Thailand have witnessed rapid development in their technology clusters. WIPO Director General Darren Tang highlighted the criticality of technology clusters in driving innovation performance for any economy. He emphasized that by fostering collaboration among scientific communities, business, and entrepreneurs, these cities or regions can establish an ecosystem that effectively transforms scientific creativity into tangible impacts. Last but not least, last week marks the 92nd anniversary of the Makiza incident, which happened on September 18, 1931. Japanese troops blew up a section of the railway in Shenyang and accused the Chinese military of doing it. Using the blast as a pretext, Japanese forces attacked the Beidayin garrison and bombarded Shenyang at the same night, launching a full-scale invasion of northeastern China, then Manchuria. The 3 northeastern provinces subsequently fell under Japanese occupation. The incident marked the beginning of the Second Sino-Japanese War, which the Chinese will win after 14 years of unwavering and arduous struggle. Last week, commemorative events are being held across China in various forms, with air raid sirens echoing in most cities to remind public to remember this poignant chapter of history. 92 years have passed. The once devastated land has undergone a remarkable transformation, illustrating the indomitable spirit of the nation that turned adversity into progress. The anniversary serves as a reminder of the sacrifice made and the hard-fought victory achieved, emphasizing the importance of cherishing and safeguarding peace and prosperity. Well, that's all for today. Thank you for watching this episode of China Currents. If you have any thoughts and comments about our show, please reach us at the email address below. I'm Kris, looking forward to hearing from you, and see you next time.
Thanks for sticking and staying with us. Next on the show is Threshold with Lisa, and reports indicate that China may be constructing EUV lithography machines on a massive scale. You do recall that in some of our previous shows or episodes of Threshold with Lisa, she highlighted the challenges of manufacturing advanced lithography machines in China. There's more to this discovery, so don't go anywhere.
A lithography technology called SSNB EUV has recently created a buzz in China. There are claims that China can build an EUV factory to replace ASML's EUV lithography machines, circumventing US sanctions through an innovative approach. In our previous video, we covered the difficulties of manufacturing advanced lithography machines.
Well, that's going to be the next episode, because we thought it was more important to let you know this first.
For those of you who haven't watched it, EUV system faced many technical hurdles like generating adequate light source power, maintaining optics under high vacuum, and fabricating flawless mask and photoresists. The production of these machines had been monopolized by the Dutch company ASML. Not surprisingly, the limited supply of these desirable tools has become a bottleneck for China's booming microchip industry, especially as US restrictions tighten. To overcome the EUV machine shortage and circumvent the US embargo, China's top minds have been working relentlessly to find solutions. Instead of following ASML's conventional path, they have come up with a different tactic. And that is the SSMB EUV technology we mentioned before. In a groundbreaking paper published by Nature, Tang Chuanxiang and his team from Tsinghua University in Beijing proposed to build an accelerator the size of a football field to power dozens of EUV lithography machines simultaneously. The accelerator is a ring-shaped device in which electrons circulate at high speed in a storage ring using magnetic fields. Electrons are accelerated to high speeds and sent through alternating magnetic fields. This makes them oscillate and emit short wavelength light. The key innovation is grouping the electrons into nanometer, scale bunches first. Within each bunch, the electrons oscillate in sync. These nanobunches are sent one by one through the magnetic fields, and each bunch oscillate together. They emit powerful coherent light at different positions. These high-energy lights can enable advanced nanoscale manufacturing. This combines two key features, the coherent emission from micro-bunching to generate intense light, and the high repetition rate enabled by the storage ring. This enables the SSMB ring to emit powerful, focused beam over a range of wavelengths from terahertz to soft X-rays in a stable, repetitive way. SSMB EUV could have huge potential for high-resolution imaging applications of EUV lithography in chip manufacturing. Public interest is driven from hopes of getting around the US blockade, commercializing Tsinhua's research, and boosting domestic chip manufacturing, which has been further encouraged by Huawei's recent 5G chip self-sufficiency. Currently, ASML's most advanced EUV lithography machines use a 20 kilowatts carbon dioxide laser to strike liquid tin droplets, creating a plasma that emits around 350 watts of 13.5 nanometers EUV light. However, this laser-produced plasma technology is capped at 500 watts, which restricts advances in next-generation lithography. In contrast, SSMB EUV offers several advantages. First, it can accommodate multiple beamline and produce high average power, driving dozens of lithography machines simultaneously for much higher output. Second, the emitted light is narrow, stable, and precise, which is ideal for imprinting precise patterns on chips. Third, the light output is continuous and consistent, enabling reliable high-volume manufacturing. Fourth, it is a clean source with minimal contaminants that could pollute the chip-making process. And finally, the SSMB principle can potentially be scaled down to even shorter wavelengths in the future, enabling smaller chip features. In essence, the Chinese researchers aim to develop not just a single EUV machine, but an entirely new form of EUV lithography facility for high-volume advanced chip-making manufacturing. Recognizing its importance, China has since invested to construct a scientific facility in Xiong'an dedicated to SSMB research. So, SSMB EUV is scientifically validated and engineering efforts are underway. But obstacles remain. The performance requirements for lithography machines in industrial production are beyond what most people can imagine. There is still a considerable gap from prototype to production-ready system. The LLP EUV approach took over 20 years to go from ideas to implementation, so we are looking at years of work. Nevertheless, under pressure from the US, China is being forced to aggressively pursue creative solutions such as SSMB EUV. With sufficient persistence and resource, breakthroughs may not be so far away. And this could be the game changer if China makes it work.
Well, let's now turn to Overlap, which is a collaborative production between Breakthrough News and Wave Media. And this week, we continue the comparative analysis of the current state of infrastructure, both in China and the United States of America. Enjoy this conversation between Walter Smolrick, our host, and Albert Wang.
So nowadays, when Chinese talk about American cities, we focus on special things which can represent some idea, such as the Fifth Avenue representing fancy shopping experience, the Wall Street representing American financial supremacy. We simply just skip the infrastructure level because there is like almost no good news about it. Also because Chinese have already reached the top level in this area. We are not jealous anymore. Like our understanding of infrastructure has reached another level. For example, we care more about internet coverage. We don't want to get disconnected when we step into an elevator. We want to keep in touch on the subway. We are working on increasing the 5G coverage so we can upload information of the whole city onto the cloud, and city planners and city managers can make sure that we are not just having the best infrastructure, but also using them in the most effective way. In fact, every time we watch the news, American politicians say they want to invest in infrastructure. I assume that this matter is supposed to be politically correct in the United States. However, we only see people talking about it. We don't see any action. It is like saying, I love you to your wife every day, but not doing anything beyond that, right? So the truth is, there will be no infrastructure if you just talk about it. I actually wonder why it is so difficult to push for infrastructure in the United States. Some people say the legislative process in the US is way too complicated, and the fight between Democrats and Republicans are too intensive. But when the United States decided to bomb a country or ban China from buying American chips, they made decisions very quickly. They made those decisions which can damage the economic interest of the United States so easily and so quickly. But they have difficulty to make decisions which is good to the country. Like building infrastructure which can bring tons of jobs to the United States and raise people's income. You guys always say that how much you hate Trump, but think about it. If a Democratic administration can actually start a massive infrastructure investment, then it will get the support in the Rust Belt and the red states. Getting a job is what they care the most. So I don't think it's just a matter of legislation being too slow. So can you sum up some reasons for this?
Sure. I mean, it's a very interesting question. It's an infuriating question for many people in the U.S. But sure, I mean, it's broadly popular among people, of many different political backgrounds, ideologies. You would think that if there's anything that the U.S. government would be able to implement, it would be an infrastructure construction program. I mean, it's even good for big businesses too. But there's a major blockage and major inefficiencies on multiple different levels. So if we take the most recent legislative debate over the infrastructure law that the Biden administration was pushing for an example. So in the United States Congress, you need to have a bill pass the House of Representatives and the Senate. But in the Senate, it doesn't require just a majority vote. It actually requires 60 out of 100 votes. So the Biden administration would have actually been able to pass a much larger, more ambitious, broader infrastructure program, but they have this ridiculous, undemocratic rule stopping them. And there are also members of the Democratic Party, Joe Biden's party, that are opposed to public spending, public investment, almost across the board in general. So there's this sort of hyper-capitalist skepticism towards anything that involves the government making substantial investments. When that can be overcome, there's a lot of bureaucratic complications that come along with actually initiating an infrastructure project. Generally, there's multiple different layers of government that have to agree to it. So, the money might come from the federal government, and then some of it could come from a state government, and then it would need to be facilitated by the local government. Oftentimes, these are presented as quote-unquote public-private partnerships, which means that some of the money comes from the government, some of it comes from private corporations, and generally private corporations can make a lot of money and profit off of these things. So that adds another layer of difficulty, right? Because, you're dealing with all of these different competing government agencies and entities on top of competing private entities and agencies. So it ends up being just this huge mess where, as you pointed out, very frequently there's not actually the completion of these projects, or it takes forever to happen.
Wow, yeah. As you mentioned, the different layers of the government and the conflict between the federal government and the local governments, it reminds me, it is very interesting. So the Department of Defense is, I guess, one of the most centralized institution in American government. And actually, it is the most effective department in the U.S. government.
Oh, that's right. And, to your point, you notice, right, that, when it comes time to go to war, spend money on the military, sanction other countries, there's never this type of debate. And, there's a saying in U.S. politics stops at the water's edge. Meaning that when it comes to issues inside of the United States, okay, we can debate, we can disagree. But when it comes to the rest of the world, essentially aggression towards the rest of the world, trying to dominate the rest of the world, once you leave the shores of the United States, the water's edge, then politics stops. Then all of these elite politicians get together and agree and get along very nicely. It's sort of this essential tradition in U.S. politics. Really, really a remarkable thing to observe.
Yeah, it's quite interesting because it's totally the opposite. When it comes to the international affairs, there will be a lot of debate in China. And people will some people are a little bit more hawkish. Some people are more like peace lovers. They will debate about should China to rival the United States? Should China to obey the so-called international rule? But when it goes to all the issues inside of the country, everybody agrees on economic development. We should invest more money on infrastructure or education or healthcare, whatever.
I wanted to ask you a question because in the US, one of the key features, I think, of the political system, and this definitely applies to infrastructure, is impunity, is a lack of accountability when you make a mistake, even a very severe mistake that could cause people to get injured or killed. So whenever there's one of these big infrastructure failures, like a bridge collapse in the United States, it's very rare for people to be held accountable who are in senior positions. Maybe somebody who's relatively low ranking could get blamed, but the people who are in charge of the system, and certainly the political leaders, are essentially never held to account for infrastructure failings, or really failings of any type. How does that work in China? I mean, is there that same level of accountability or lack of accountability?
Yeah, well, that's one big difference between the United States and China, I believe. Usually when we have an accident, no matter if it is a road or bridge collapses, the government will definitely set up an investigation team to investigate the cause of the accident and to figure out who is responsible for this. For example, after the collapse of a residential building in Hunan province last year, the local mayor lost his job for it. When an accident occurs, it is supposed to have someone to be held accountable. So I quite wonder how about in the thing in the United States, because we also saw an apartment building falling apart in Florida, right?
Yeah, I mean, so there's if there are investigations, but they're generally very long, very drawn out, and they're designed essentially so that powerful people can avoid accountability, can avoid blame. So there are different regulatory bodies, different safety agencies that will investigate when there's an accident related to, say, transportation, or it could be a criminal proceeding if it's truly egregious. But if you're a wealthy person, if you're a corporation with a lot of resources, you can hire a team of lawyers. You probably have political connections. It's very easy, especially as public attention fades, as these investigations drag out over and over and over. So many months or perhaps even years. It's easy for powerful people to avoid accountability in that way. I think that. Another feature that's important when it comes to who holds people accountable in the United States when there's these types of serious failures is really the lack of like a political alternative or a way for people to sort of express their displeasure. Because it's bipartisan, right? It's both Republican Party politicians and Democratic Party politicians that preside over this collapse of basic infrastructure. I think that's really something that bothers a lot of people in the United States. Albert, I'm interested too in the perception specifically of young people in China about infrastructure. How do young people view the state of infrastructure in the country? Because in the U.S., it's sort of one of the things that youth look to as an example of, wow, things are really getting worse in the U.S. As time goes on, things are getting worse, not better. Our lives are more likely to be worse than our parents, right? Whereas in the past, parents were pretty sure that their kids' lives were going to be better than theirs, right? So the fact that infrastructure is in this sort of decrepit, crumbling state in the U.S., that really hammers home that point to young people in the U.S. But what's public opinion? What are attitudes like among youth in China towards things like public transportation, the state of roads, highways, that type of thing?
You mean the young people's opinion on China's infrastructure or on American infrastructure?
Yeah, on China's infrastructure.
On China's infrastructure. Okay. The thing is that for my generation, I was born in 1991. So when I was born, China was quite relatively underdeveloped. We didn't have very good infrastructure. So I can sense the fast development of infrastructure. I saw the very beginning of the high-speed train from like day one to now we have like one of the best high-speed rail system in the world. So I can feel it, I can sense it, and I can see it. But for the younger generation, they kind of like born to have it. So it is like for them, it is like a normal thing. For them, China is supposed to have the best infrastructure in the world. It is not a question for them if China should develop and should like getting better. What they want is like faster internet. What they want is like bigger, wider, and faster transportation, like more lines underground. So that's pretty much what the Chinese younger generation feel about the Chinese infrastructure. So you can see the difference between the elderly generation and the younger generation. For the elderly generation, as I mentioned, we even have a television program saying that a middle-class man in China were willing to give up his life in the Chinese capital city to move to the United States to chase his American dream. But today, when the younger generation go to like not just the United States, but maybe to Europe or to some other countries, they feel that maybe your roads are not good enough. Maybe your transportation are not convenient enough. Maybe you should do better. They don't think that China should do better. They think that other countries should do better. So you can see the difference.
Yeah, it's so interesting. You know, in the United States, you mentioned internet because that's actually a big issue in rural parts of the United States as well. There's this, big push to build more high-speed broadband internet access in rural parts of the United States where, you would think basically everyone in the richest country on the planet would have no problem accessing the internet. But that's actually not the case. There's really big inequality between the cities and the rural areas when it comes to quality of infrastructure. And I'm wondering what that divide is like in China too. What are the big differences when it comes to infrastructure construction in the cities versus the countryside? Are there efforts made to overcome that?
China has not given up on rural areas either. The government has built roads in rural areas to ensure that farmers can have a better and easier access to go out and do business. Government have built network-based stations so that farmers can use their cell phones to sell agriculture products directly on the internet through live streaming, reducing the cost of doing business. However, those infrastructures are actually not economically efficient. So if you fully depend on market economy, the private sectors will never invest in these areas. So those developments are paid off by the government for the benefit of the rural population. So I think that is the concern in China.
Well, I think that might be all the time we have. It was very interesting having this conversation with you. I really appreciate this show. And I think these types of conversations are so necessary now when the new Cold War narrative is becoming so entrenched. It's really fascinating, and I really appreciate this type of exchange. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much.
Now let's move on to the Thinkers Forum. And this week's discussion features Carlos Ron, Venezuela's Deputy Minister of Foreign Affairs for North America, who doubles as the president of the Simon Bolivar Institute for Peace and Solidarity Among Peoples. And he takes on a very important subject matter, which is the relations between Venezuela and China.
We have a lot of cooperation, over 500 agreements between the two countries. I think the best word, or the first word that comes to my mind when I think about China, is friend. It's a country that has been friendly to Venezuela ever since I've been a diplomat and have been in this relationship. I think that China has shown that it wants us to experience what China is, or to see China for what it is. And it's something that is important because the achievements that China has made, the experience of building its own socialist model, modern type of socialism, for a country like ours, which is also trying to build its own socialism. Well, it's very inspiring. I think we pay attention to what China does, again, because I think China has shown with the alleviation of poverty and with the advances in technology and in development that has had in the recent years, which has been fast growth. In the last 40 years, China has transformed into a totally different country. So we, of course, see all the recent history of China as something that we need to study, not because we need to imitate or duplicate, because I think China has its own characteristics and its model works for China. And we're not trying to imitate, we're trying to create our own model. What we learn is that other models are possible when we see China with a success. Not the imposition of the one model by the United States, by neoliberal policies and recipes. The idea of Fukuyama, the end of history. There's only one way to do things. Well, China has shown that that's not true. That you could do things and have a lot of positive outcomes, a lot of outcomes that are not measured in necessarily only in economic output, but also in real transformation in people's lives, in humanity. So if you have a model that shows that it has been able to solve the primary concerns of people, then that's something that we want to look at and hope that we can implement something similar with our own characteristics as well. I think China is playing a very important role, constructive role in world politics. We have seen very recent attempts of China at bringing countries together. For example, the recent, because I think that's the role that countries should play in the international community, bring countries together, attempt at peace, find ways to promote dialogue and mutual benefit, rather than feed wars or trying to create polarize the world into my friends, my enemies. That's not the way diplomacy should work. China is, I think, an example of a country that knows how to respect other countries' sovereignty, other countries' self-determination. China is a country that is respectful of international law, which I think is very important. So those type of roles that China is playing, bringing people together, promoting peace, defending international law, I think is the most constructive role that a country can play in international politics, and I think is very positive.
Well, here is where we part ways on this week's edition of China Now. As usual, I want to say thank you for spending some 60 minutes of your Saturday with us here on the show. My name is Makiza Micheline Latifa, and please do not forget to send in your thoughts, comments, feedback, and suggestions through the email provided below. See you same time next week.